for review. And we have before drifted into what I thought was the preliminary planning, which is out of sort for the development plan review process. So I just offer that comment.
Yep.
Okay?
And this will be very narrowly tailored, just to address the issue, to make sure that the conventional plan can support the 7 lots.
Thank you.
All right? Thank you.
Mr. Lynch, before you proceed, I should have received the correspondence that we received today, so before you continue, we have a piece of correspondence from Melissa Welch dated October 19th, 2021. Subject, comment on 19 October special planning board meeting. May I have a motion to receive this correspondence?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Bill?
So I'm opposed to receiving any new correspondence at this juncture of the hearing that's relative to testimony that has not been remanded back to us by the zoning board. I think after looking at the items that we're asked to receive here, I think it's more appropriate that that material is admitted into the record at preliminary plan stage. I don't think it's appropriate to receive it now. It's just, frankly, this is a complicated hearing. This is a complicated hearing enough as it is. By receiving more testimony, it simply opens the door for us to take more testimony. And we've been down this road before. I don't think it's appropriate, and I don't believe we should be accepting it.
All we're doing is receiving it. We're not discussing it. We're just receiving a correspondence. You'll get your turn to speak. Motion is to receive the correspondence. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed to receive.
Motion passes 4-3.
Mr. Chairman, I'll have Ms. Small come up.
Make sure you speak into the microphone or use the handheld mic.
I'll
Let
have
me
to
know
move
if you
it down
can't hear
to
them.
this lower level here. Lynn, do you need me to do this? No.
I don't do any swearing in.
Lynn Small, Northeast Engineers, 6 Valley Road, Middletown.
Speak into the mic, use the handheld microphone. Is there a hand? Here it is.
Lynn, up on the monitors, that is the revised conventional plan that you have prepared as a result of the zoning board's instruction.
Is that on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you please just explain briefly what additional information that you put on this conventional plan that was not on the original plan that was provided to the board at the original hearing?
Okay. The additional information on the plan that you have before you tonight includes footprints for the placeholders for the houses, driveways, placeholder rain gardens, and septic areas for each of the single-family lots. I think actually the original plan had septic areas for the original lots, but we did add the houses and driveways and placeholder rain gardens to each of the lots.
And is that the same information that was included on the conservation plan?
Yes, it is.
Were the setbacks included in the original document?
Yes.
And the location of
The
wells?
building setbacks were included in the original conventional plan that was provided on the master plan set that was previously before you. To this plan, all we added was the house footprints, driveways, and rain garden areas,
The well locations, that was already there?
and well locations. I think we might have had that on the original as well.
Okay.
So the information for both is now equivalent?
Yes.
Just one question, Ms. Small. In your opinion, can this proposed conventional plan support 7 lots on the site, given any developmental land constraints?
Yes. It would be subject to final design and drainage designs, but we did include a placeholder for the drainage area because that gets removed from your developable land area. So it's estimated at this point, but we do estimate based on our experience. But we believe that this project supports 7 lots on a conventional plan.
I don't have any further questions from Ms. Small, unless the board does.
Does the objector's attorney wish to speak?
I'm Ms. Small. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. I'm Steve McGilver. I think we've met before,
Yes.
probably when I was up there and you were down here. But I just wanted to ask you a couple questions on the your newly submitted plan.
See it on the plan, so.
Please identify yourself, please.
Steve McGilver, for the record. I'm sorry, I didn't see that voice. So, Ms. Small, you understand that you're here from a remand from the Zoning Board of Review?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand the decision sending back the plan to the planning board?
Yes.
Okay. Did you take a look at that and read it?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand that your newly submitted plan was supposed to show land development constraints as required by Article 3, Section 302E of the subdivision rules, correct?
Yes.
You understand the planning board asked that this plan show that despite those constraints,
Mr. McGillivray, for the benefit of the board members and the audience, could you describe what that section covers?
yes, that section covers just what I said, which is that the conventional land plan must depict land development constraints, which is what the zoning board found in its decision.
Yeah.
It indicated that
Yeah, understood.
that this matter should be reheard, that Mr. Hool should be cross-examined, and that the planning board should look at this newly submitted plan, which will show, and I'm reading from the plan, from the decision, the applicant must demonstrate to the planning board that the lots as depicted on the conventional plan are capable of supporting the proposed development, given any land development constraints.
Could you hold the mic closer? She's having trouble hearing you.
Okay.
That's
Is that better?
Much better.
All right. We're going to have to give this a wipe when I'm done because I've got it pretty close here. All right. So that the new plan, C9, shows the development constraints. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the plan demonstrates that 7 conventional house lots can be constructed despite these land development constraints. Correct?
The proposed site plan meets the criteria and removes the undevelopable land area from the overall lot size and has demonstrated that we can fit 7 residential lots on the site by removing defined undevelopable land areas in accordance with the zoning ordinance and meeting the required land area per lot and frontage requirements.
Good. Thank you. And as you said, you added house footprints, correct?
Yes.
Do you depict what the size of those houses will be?
That would, I mean, I believe they're about 3,500 square feet, but that would be finalized during the preliminary design stage.
Okay.
We just demonstrated that you could fit a reasonably sized house on this property.
So you just you assumed, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with assuming that the footprint would be 3,500 square feet.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, it could be 2,500 square feet. The size of the footprint is irrelevant, other than we made sure that it was a suitable footprint size for an R40 zone.
I want you to focus on the plan that was submitted. How big are the footprint indicated on that plan?
The size of the footprint is not indicated on the
Okay.
plan.
Do you know what the size of these?
It's between
footprints are?
2,500 and 3,500 square feet,
Okay. How do you know that?
because it's what we showed on the conservation side plan.
Okay.
And that was what the client had asked us
Okay.
to allow for.
And you said you also showed OWTSs, or some form of septic, correct?
Yep, yes.
And there are rules and regulations that dictate the size of those systems, correct?
Correct.
What are the size of the systems you have indicated here?
Those size of those systems, now, for the record, test holes are not required at our master plan level. So we're at a step ahead on this project. We did size them in accordance with the soils that are on this site in the areas of suitable test holes that we've already done on the property. And they're all sized for 4-bedroom septic systems.
Okay. And so how big are they as depicted here on the plan?
I don't know the square footage offhand.
Okay. Can you approximate looking at the plan?
I can approximate if I can get my calculator.
Do you have a calculator with you?
I do.
Okay, can you just grab it and let's see
Sure,
what-
hold on. So the systems on the site are sized for 460 gallons per day.
Okay. So how much area do they take as depicted here?
They should be about 307 square feet
Okay.
each.
Now,
That's all that's required anyway.
right.
They
What do
might be bigger on this plan.
They might be, can you tell how big they are on the plan?
I mean, the full-size plans are to scale, but
Yeah.
they're placeholders that fit on the
Right.
project and
So-
can be engineered.
Just humor me for a second. Can you tell how big they are in the plan? Because the plan is all we have to go by.
We submitted full-size
Mr.
plans.
McGillivray, we're not here to discuss engineering information at this meeting, at this hearing. This is for master plan approval.
I understand that, and I've asked for just a little bit of leeway. I'm trying to establish whether this plan actually proves that you can get 7 conventional lots as required by the zoning board's decision.
I
But that's, hang on a minute. We're getting out of line here. This is a conceptual review of this project, period. And I'm going to say that until I get tired of it.
Yep.
So that's why I asked that question earlier about entering into engineering details which I don't think are appropriate for master plan review. And it comes at preliminary planning, when we get into the details that Ms. Small makes her earning doing. So that's my opinion, and I'm putting it out there.
May I address Mr. Weber's
Excuse me,
concerns?
Marissa, do we need to hear this testimony? What is the status here? This sounds like he's getting into engineering information which we're not required to look at in master plan approval.
That's right. The case law on this issue indicates that only conceptual plans are required and the more detailed plans come later. So as long as you find, and there's enough evidence in the record to support your finding, that the plans are conceptually appropriate, then you're good.
Thank you. So please restrict yourself to conceptual comments.
Do you mind if I just put on the record my argument with respect to that issue?
You can object if you wish.
Okay, and my objection is based on the following. One, if you go with the conservation plan, you will never see further engineering on the conventional plan again. This is your last chance to determine whether a conventional plan can actually sustain 7 lots. So the idea that there's going to be further engineering down the road, you won't see it with respect to the conventional plan. Secondly, and this is probably most important, you're looking at the rules in terms of what is required during conceptual plan review. The zoning board has ruled on this issue, what you should be looking at, what you should find, and what type of hearing you have to hold. If the applicant disagreed with the zoning board's interpretation, they could have appealed that to the Superior Court. They did not. So the zoning board's declarations, their guidance, as contained in their decision, are binding upon this board. So it is very different than if we were just here with a blank slate on conceptual or master plan review.
Ms. Small, are there any limitations on the 7 lots?
There are none. I assure you that these sizes that we showed for the houses and the septics fit on these lots. And these lots are bigger than those on the conservation plan. So we would have more space to make everything work on the conventional subdivision plan than on the conservation plan.
I'd like to continue my cross for just about
Sure,
10
go
more
ahead.
minutes, if I may. I appreciate the leeway. Ms. Small, you also have rain gardens inserted here, correct?
They're only placeholders.
Well, they're only placeholders, but the size of the rain gardens are driven by how much impervious surface is on each of the lots, correct?
All would be evaluated at preliminary.
And the purpose of, or I should say, DEM has approved rain gardens as a stormwater management feature, correct?
Yes.
And they've approved it as a way to retain and detain and treat stormwater runoff generated from impervious surfaces, correct?
It's used as a water quality feature.
Okay.
Yes.
That wasn't my question. I don't think I asked about water quality. It takes the runoff, correct?
It takes the runoff, but it's not a detention device.
Okay.
We do not meter the outfall.
So you
We
just
don't even count what's infiltrating through the rain garden very often in our drainage calculations.
Okay. They're designed based upon how much impervious surface you have, correct?
They would be sized at preliminary, yes.
Yes, okay. And so the size of those rain gardens is driven by how big the roof is, correct?
Correct.
How big the driveway is, correct?
An impervious driveway, yes.
Right. And how big is a typical rain garden?
It depends on the impervious area on the lot.
Right. So can they be as big as 300 square feet?
I don't know that answer offhand. It would depend on, it's site by site. They're
Right.
sized based on the soils.
Mr. McGillivray, are
for the
we
lot.
going to address the same issue of dealing just with conceptual?
Yes. Yes. So you haven't depicted here how big they are.
No, as I said, they're placeholders only. They're also not detention devices. They're water quality features only.
They do provide some drainage, correct?
They're providing groundwater recharge.
Does the water drain into them?
The water drains into them and hopefully infiltrates into the ground,
Oh,
therefore recharging the subsurface waters.
okay. And you did not subtract from the developable land area.
Nor would I. Water quality features are not used as detention devices, and if you read the zoning ordinance, it says areas for retention and detention are removed from the developable land area, not water quality features. This is a precedent that we have in Middletown already.
I just want to get this clear. Are you saying then that, is this part of a drainage system?
We're getting into engineering information. This is going to be dealt with at the preliminary stage.
Will
It's
you,
not required for
Will you-
master plan approval.
will you have them do the same engineering for the conventional plan? at
That
the
is not
stage?
required.
So you're going to, let me ask, if you don't mind, just about 3 or 4 more questions.
Go ahead.
Ms. Small, turning to Lot 1, how much developable area is in Lot 1?
40,044 square feet.
So if you have 44 feet less developable area, that lot doesn't work, correct?
We have no drainage features or undevelopable areas on this lot that are proposed.
That's an interesting answer, but it's not the answer to my question. My question is as follows. If you have 44 feet less developable area, that lot doesn't work, correct?
It would not meet the minimum 40,000 square feet.
And with respect to lot number 3, if you have 160 square feet less developable area, that lot doesn't work, correct?
I'm just trying to find. These are, that's correct. We meet the 40,000
And-
40,000 square foot requirement.
And so with respect to lot 2, if you have 238 square feet less developable area, that lot doesn't work either, does it?
That's correct, but I do not plan on putting a detention basin in there or a roadway.
Okay. And it's your position that rain gardens are not subtracted from
We do
the
not,
developable land? I just wanted to...
Hold on one second. Ron, did the TRC sign off on these calculations?
In the original memo, yeah.
The TRC forwarded a positive recommendation to the planning board.
And do they evaluate the calculations to come up with these results?
Well, we did not have the same conceptual plan for the conventional at that time that the TRC reviewed the...
So the TRC looked at the conservation plan, but not the conventional plan?
The conventional plan that was in the original packet they reviewed,
Yeah.
which is not the same that you're seeing tonight.
The lot sizes were the same.
Right.
The only difference is now that the structures.
Right.
And we had requested that the newly submitted plans go back to the TRC so that they could actually give a positive recommendation with respect to this new plan, which...
They saw the lot areas.
To delay this further.
They saw the lot areas.
Well, they did not see the land constraint, development constraints, which is what they would have to look at to give a positive recommendation. That's our position, that we think it's correct under the ordinances. It's clearly correct under the decision of the zoning board, which is what should be guiding you. With that, I have a letter from an engineer that I'd like to submit.
A letter from,
An engineer that I would like to submit.
We're not taking that, I don't think.
does it address engineering information?
It addresses whether the rain gardens should be included in development area or not, and the size of the rain gardens.
That is not part of master plan approval.
Okay. And again, just for the record, it is part of master plan approval as determined by the zoning board in their decision.
Marissa, I need some help here.
Hang on 1 second. So you've got discretion about whether you want to consider or go forward with the conservation versus the conventional plan. The zoning board indicated that on remand, you should take a look at additional information, including the plan with changes as have been submitted. So I would indicate that you should consider what's before you and exercise your discretion on which conservation or conventional plan you want to move forward with. And I would stick to that.
I came here tonight not to get involved too much in the conceptual plan or the standard plan. I came here tonight to determine if 7 lots are acceptable or not, period. And I think if you go back and look at what one of the things the zoning board said, B.J. Owen asked that question early on, and I think the zoning board came back and said, yes, that's in our purview to decide, are there going to be 7 lots or some other number? So that's why I'm sitting here tonight, is to make a decision about that question, period.
Okay, let me ask this question. Marissa, from your perspective, has the applicant met the requirement of submitting equivalent information on both plans?
I have not compared the 2 site plan sets to tell you whether that's the case or not. I hate to defer to Ron on this, but I don't know if he's had a chance to compare the 2.
Based on my review, both plans,
I'm sorry,
based on my review, both plans contain the same level of information.
same information.
Yes.
So have we, in essence, addressed the first question before us this evening?
If you feel as though you have enough evidence before you to make a decision on that, then yes.
Does anyone feel that we have not enough information to go forward with the second question? Any member of the board feel we do not have enough information? Then I suggest we move on to the second question, which is to look at the number of lots for master plan approval. First, we'll hear from the applicant's attorney.
Mr. Chair, so that's a ruling that you won't be receiving the engineer's report that I have here.
We'll be happy to receive it at preliminary hearing.
It pertains to the conventional plan, which, again, if you go with the conservation plan, you
Then
won't be
we
seeing.
won't need it.
Okay. Thank you. As long as it's on the record, I'm fine.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much. I'll now focus my attention on the issue of this planning board's ability to reduce the number of lots that were proposed at the master plan stage. We're dealing with two conflicting sections of the subdivision regulations. We're dealing with Article 4, and we're dealing with Article 3 for the conventional subdivision. The objectors argue that under, get that section. Section 407B4, that this board has the authority at the master plan stage to, and let me quote the language in the ordinance. And this is under 4, Section 4, where it deals with decision. It says, "The planning board shall, within the time frame prescribed by Rhode Island General Laws 45-23-40, or within such further time as may be consented to by the applicant, comma, approve of the master plan as submitted, approve with changes and/or conditions, or deny the application according to the requirements of Section 903. So that's the section that Ms. Owen had a question on about the board's ability to reduce the number of lots at the master plan stage. I think what we have here is a dispute on what the definition of change, approve with changes and/or conditions, what that means. The objectors want you to say that you can reduce this down to a 2-lot subdivision at the master plan stage. We don't think that that's appropriate. Our interpretation and definition of changes, if you want us to move a roadway somewhere, if you want us to change some design features, relocate entranceways, that's a change. You can instruct the applicant to make those changes and come back to you at preliminary plan stage with those modifications to the plan. The section that we believe is appropriate and which is right on point is in Article 3 for the conservation development. And that is Section 304B. There is specific language in the ordinance that talks about, and I'll skip through the beginning part, where it talks about at the master plan stage, the board determines the initial number of lots in the subdivision. So you make a determination as to what those initial lots are, and then we proceed. And then it goes on to say, it says, the applicant shall use this initial determination as the basis for submission of more detailed information during subsequent stages of review. Upon further investigation and upon receipt of more detailed soils and environmental information as may be provided in the subsequent stages of review, the planning board may reduce the number of lots/dwelling units contained in the initial basic maximum number. Our position is that at the master plan stage, the board can change our design, but it can't reduce the number of lots that we're proposing. The board has that ability to reduce those number of lots when you get that detailed environmental information, soil information. That's the point where the board has the ability to say, your soils cannot support 7 lots in the subdivision. At the preliminary stage, that's when you can reduce the number of lots, not at the master plan stage. So it's our position that we are entitled to 7 lots at the master plan stage. We're not locked into those lots forever. We realize that we need to support our proposed development with the engineering at the preliminary plan stage. If we can't, and if the engineering doesn't support 7 lots, then this board can reduce those lots, whether it's 6 lots, 5 lots, whatever the engineering provides. So we think that that is the appropriate time for the board to consider reducing the number of lots at the preliminary plan stage. So my request is that the board acknowledge that you may change the design of the plan, but you have made a determination that you're going to determine whether you can reduce the number of lots at the preliminary plan stage. So that's our position on that second issue.
Mr. Chairman?
Hold on. Mr. Lynch, we also consider consistency with the comprehensive plan. And that's not covered by those ordinances. How would you address that?
Well, I think if you look at the comprehensive plan, this is an R40 district, low density. And if you look at the land usage tables, the land usage section of the comprehensive plan, it specifically talks about having conservation subdivisions in this district. So that proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's specifically identified in that section.
Art, you have a question? Art,
Well,
and then John.
One of the required findings at this level comes under section 403. And it says the proposed development is consistent with the comprehensive community plan and/or has adequately addressed the issues where there may be inconsistencies. My opinion is this plan in its current 7-lot subdivision is not consistent with the comp plan. It is an intensification of a sensitive area. Low density is pretty clear to me. That's my point. This is inconsistent with the comp plan. Therefore, 7 lots, if 7 lots are too many, what's the right number? And it's not 7. I don't know what it is, but 7 is too many. And I think it's inconsistent with the comp plan from my reading and interpretation of it.
Well, I'll follow up on that. With respect to the comp plan, it has identified this area as low density, and it identifies it as R40 zoning. No question about that. That's what the zoning ordinance has determined, that this is R40. You can create lots in this district that are 40,000 square feet, and that's what we've proposed before you this evening. The distinction between whether a conventional subdivision is preferred over a conservation system, the comprehensive plan specifically says that in this district, conservation developments are favored. So the comprehensive plan doesn't get into the number of lots that you can put in an R40. It doesn't say because you're in an R40 in a conventional subdivision, you have to do less lots than what's proposed or permitted under the zoning ordinance.
Well, I guess maybe I don't understand what low density means. I think I know what low density means, and I don't particularly care if it's a conservation subdivision or a conventional subdivision. 7 lots, again, in my opinion, of reading this particular comp plan, I find it to be inconsistent. I don't know about 6 other people sitting here, but that's my view.
Let me get.
Jay, can we move on and let
Yeah,
some others speak?
sure.
BJ.
Yes, I have something to say. I'd like to show everyone who has never seen the comprehensive plan. Here it is, and it is quite large. So on page 1110, there is an inventory of historic landscapes of Rhode Island, published in 2002 by the Rhode Island Historical Preservation Heritage Commission. Includes an inventory of individual historic landscapes by the community in Rhode Island, featuring both the design and the vernacular. And then in Middletown, and the next page is Green Inn Avenue, Agricultural Landscapes, 3 farms at 1498 Green Inn Avenue, 1499 Green Inn Avenue, and Howland Avenue. And I am very concerned about the historical significance of this if we are going to take our comprehensive plan seriously. And I have to say that I do think that 7 lots are too much for this property. And I've viewed the property, I've walked down Howland Avenue, down to the property itself. There's so many wetlands there. It does have historical significance. And here in Middletown, we're losing so much of this. I would like to see fewer lots than 7. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just
Sure.
respond to
Yes,
Mr.
go
Weber.
ahead.
Mr. Weber, looking at the comprehensive plan, low density is defined, and it's in section Roman numeral 9, page 9, where it talks about low-density residential development is zoned R40. And that's what we are. We're in low density, we're in R40. So the comprehensive plan has contemplated that 40,000 square foot lots are permitted in this district.
Any other comments?
I remain unpersuaded.
Bill?
Not at this time, no.
No,
I'll
okay.
hold off.
Please continue. Do you have anything else, Jay?
No, I don't have anything else.
Does the objector's attorney wish to speak?
Thank you. First, the number of lots that you can approve or consider tonight at the master plan stage. The fact of the matter, all the arguments that you just heard were the arguments that were presented to the zoning board on appeal from the last decision. And the zoning board rejected them. The zoning board issued a decision that said that this planning board, among other things, must decide the basic number of residential lots. It further said, the application for master plan approval should be returned to the planning board so that it can consider a fewer number of lots at master plan stage.
That's what I said before. That's what I said before.
So it is very clear, and I'm just looking because I know there's additional language. It finds fault with the planning board in the first go-around because you were advised that you couldn't consider fewer than 7 lots at the master plan. And you took that advice, and the zoning board addressed that square on and said, no, you may at master plan, in fact, indeed, you have to at master plan, consider whether fewer lots are more appropriate. So again, the arguments with respect to what the ordinances say have been made. They've been ruled on by an appellate body that creates instructions on remand to the planning board on how to move forward. The second issue, which is the one that Mr. Weber was, I think, very articulately explaining and expressing, there are 2 separate and distinct requirements here. You have to both meet the dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance and comport or comply with the comprehensive plan. If you look, there are 2 different prongs that you have to check off in order to approve at each stage. And I've had this issue a number of times with respect to solar farms in Rhode Island, where they say, hey, the zoning ordinance allows for it, it meets all the dimensional requirements, and the town says, no, but it doesn't meet either the spirit or the intent of the comprehensive plan. And we've gone up to a Superior Court, and Superior Court says, you're right, you have to check both boxes. Just because you check the zoning dimensional requirements doesn't mean that you also get to check the comprehensive plan box. So they have to be both 40,000 feet and meet the expressions and guidelines and kind of aspirations as indicated in the comprehensive plan. And I'll just add one last thing. The zoning board also said that Mr. Hull's qualifications should be reconsidered, and then he should be able to be cross-examined. But I just note that as a procedural matter.
Thank you. Marissa, I have a question. Does the planning board have the wherewithal at this stage to consider fewer lots?
Based on the decision of the zoning board, yes, you should be considering the number of lots. It doesn't mean that the zoning board can compel you to decide a certain way, but you should be considering them. That's the language they used.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
So I have a question. If we're not able to dive into some more of the details, how are we supposed to determine the appropriate number of lots for this potential subdivision?
Let's hold off until we get to that discussion. We're
All
not
right.
quite there yet.
Okay. Just
At this point, I'd like to hear from members of the public. Anyone who would like to speak? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. My name is Dwight Saprell, and I'm a near neighbor to this property at 165 Indian Avenue. As importantly, I've been walking, running, driving by this beautiful farm since I was 20 years old, which wasn't yesterday, to court my wife, who was born here on Aquidneck Island. I have been through the Middletown Community Comprehensive Plan, which occupies that chair there, in order to completely understand the variety of factors that the planning board has to weigh when considering the development of a property like this. It's really complicated, and your job is difficult as you consider all of the relevant factors. But let me start with the vision statement of the town plan. Quote, Middletown will preserve its quality of life for all generations as a safe and friendly community with a distinctive heritage, extraordinary cultural and historic resources, a strong local economy, and a fiscally sound government. That's excellent. I think as citizens of Middletown, we can all buy into that. Section 2 of the plan, titled Cultural and Historic Resources, tells us what that phrase in the vision statement about cultural and historic resources actually means. Section 2 states, and I quote, "It is a priority of the town to protect these historic sites and landscapes and to sustain the quality of life and character of the town." Page 1, Section 2. The same section on page 3 also says, agriculture has always been one of Middletown's most important activities. Any, and this is a literal quote, any further reduction in the number of farms in Middletown would alter the essential character of the town, as farms themselves are part of the scenic beauty of the area. This site, which you're discussing tonight, Nunes Farm, was a dairy farm until the death of the farmer. Then this same section of the comprehensive plan gives us an inventory, which Ms. Owen referenced, it's a list of the cultural and historic resources of Middletown so that there can be no misunderstanding of what the vision statement means when it says cultural and historic resources. It identifies, quote, farms and the stone walls which trace the boundaries of a farmer's field as an important cultural resource. This property is a farm with stone walls. Then it gives us a list of specific places that have special historical and cultural importance in Middletown. Listed first is Indian Avenue between Green End Avenue and 3rd Beach Road, including a picturesque stone chapel built in 1884. And that chapel, of course, is St. Columba's. It abuts this farm. Also listed in the inventory of the comprehensive plan is the Stony Brook Estate Historic District. Those are the houses around St. Columba's. This area was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2009. Finally, and I'm going to repeat what Ms. Owen said, in the Middletown Comprehensive Plan Inventory of Historic Landscapes on page 10 is Green End Avenue agricultural landscape. 3 farms on Green End Avenue in Howland. This is one of those farms. So now we can see the development proposal in the proper context. We have a proposed development to put the maximum number of potentially allowable new houses on a farm with stone walls when that farm is specifically named in Middletown's Inventory of Historic Landscapes, and that farm abuts a National Register Historic District and Historic Chapel, both also on the inventory of Middletown's most important cultural resources. And finally, that farm also abuts 2 historic cemeteries, also on the list of Middletown's Inventory of Historic and Cultural Places, page 10. All of this, from the comprehensive plan, and I'm quoting you directly, makes clear that this farm, this property, is one of the most important cultural and historic areas in Middletown. which the vision statement of the comprehensive plan says is essential to preserving the quality of life for Middletown residents. And this farm is an integral part of it. But that's just the cultural and historic importance of this farm. Let me speak to what the Middletown Comprehensive Plan says
Do you have much
about-
more to, do you have much more to say?
It's about 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
And I appreciate your discretion, but development is forever. So just a couple of minutes. Section 3 of the comprehensive plan identifies Nunes Farm as part of the Little Creek drainage basin. The proposed intensive development recommended tonight is on a hill. So all the runoff will flow down the hill into Little Creek, which is also a part of the property. And then it empties into the Secaunet, 150 yards away. And that outflow into the Secaunet goes directly to Third Beach, just down the road. Section 3 of the comprehensive plan talks about floodplains. And the lower section of Nunes Farm, this property, and the area around St. Columba's is identified as a floodplain on the maps of the Middletown Comprehensive Plan. Then it says, quote, due to the potential for flooding and possible contamination of water supply, development within the watershed must be carefully controlled. Have any of you gentlemen, or you people who propose to develop this land, seen what happens to this area when it rains? That area becomes a raging torrent that floods the lower part of the Memorial Cemetery, one of the historic and cultural items on the list, and covers the upper part of the St. Columba's Cemetery, covering graves, desecrating graves is actually the right language. And the planning board needs to see the visual evidence.
We've seen it.
Yeah.
I have copies here for the public if anybody wants to see it.
I'm good.
Would you send it down?
And this is what happens now. Before you take the top half of this farm, you scrape it flat, you put in a road and 7 houses with impervious surface that will shed more water down the hill, that will include the landscape chemicals and the motor oils that are generated by the development, and you will make the flooding, which you can see is already terrible, so much worse. The next part of the comprehensive plan, section 3, forests and fields, speaks exactly to this point. Quote, disturbing vegetative cover can cause an increased volume and velocity of water runoff, increased soil erosion, etc. Quote, particularly in areas of steep slopes adjacent to waterways, which is exactly what we have here. The proposed development is at the top of a steep slope and adjacent to a downhill waterway, which is Little Creek.
One
flowing
more
into the
minute,
economy.
please. One more minute, please.
That water in the Secaunet flows directly to Third Beach. Another section of the comprehensive plan states, and it's illustrated in the plan and in the maps in the plan, that those areas above Third Beach, including where Little Creek flows into the Secaunet, are designated conservation waters by the state of Rhode Island. You must control what goes into conservation waters because it flows directly to public beaches. So where does that leave us? Section 9, page 3, and I'm almost done, entitled Land Use, says, quote, land conservation efforts should continue and the town should ensure that any residential development that does occur is environmentally sound and context sensitive. And I'm concluding. Respectfully, members of the planning board, I submit to you that using the plain and well-crafted language of the Middletown Community Comprehensive Plan, which is the governing document for the future of this town, and on behalf of not only the current residents of Middletown, but on behalf of the future generations that will live here and deserve a chance to enjoy the same quality of life that we have enjoyed, your children and grandchildren, our children and grandchildren.
Time is up.
This development plan is neither context sensitive to the extraordinary cultural and historic resources of Middletown, of which this farm is an integral part, nor is it environmentally sound, and I ask you to reject it.
Thank you.
Meg Steiner, Indian Avenue. I'd like to talk about, well,
Address, please.
sorry, 133. I'd like to talk a little more about water. Mr. Nash, a rain garden is a soil engineering plan and a planting plan. It is not a massive engineering plan to be done by an engineering
I'm aware of what
company.
it is. I don't need to be lectured. Please continue with your testimony.
I'd be happy to. If we plan the rain gardens for peak rain events, which is what they're designed to be done, given that we had 5 and 7 inches of rain this summer in an event, how massive are those rain gardens going to be to improve the water quality? It's going to take massive amounts. You're not going to have enough room to really mitigate the water runoff that's going to be happening. I would like you all to consider decreasing the number of houses. Please, this island is changing rapidly. You all are working really hard trying to keep the beauty of our town. I ask you to consider our views. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Craig. I live at 501 Indian Avenue. Gentleman and lady. The Middletown Community Comprehensive Plan charges you, you're its stewards, with preserving the quality of life in this town for all generations, and I take that to include my 7 grandchildren and their children. The comprehensive plan, which we've heard a lot about from Dwight and I've studied as well, speaks to preservation as a key component to the town's future growth, its economy, its character, and its appeal. The word preserve is used, Mr. Nash and everyone else, please, I hope I'm not boring you, repeatedly and importantly within the context of protection. Protection of scenic beauty, of historic and cultural resources, and of natural and ecological resources. The plan specifically charges you to protect the natural, historic, and rural character of Middletown. But wait, actually, if you look in that document, you'll notice that you're charged not only to protect, but to enhance the town's natural, scenic beauty and its heritage. I take these words very seriously, and I think everyone else here does as well. The Nunes Farm was always a dairy farm. In the 50 years I have been coming to Middletown, cows graze there. The Nunes Farm is identified, as you have heard, as one of the 3 farms that are actually considered historic landscape. It's like a Constable painting. Its beauty is central to the appeal and bucolic charm of that neighborhood. The plan rightly recognizes that farms are part of the scenic beauty that must be preserved. And I must ask you, have you taken this into consideration? That development of this parcel at the extent or any houses put up there will irreparably destroy and alter the scenic beauty of the area, its rural and historic character. You've heard that this farm abuts St. Columba's, 2 cemeteries, and is right in the middle of the Paradise Valley scenic highway loop. It also abuts my home. We are at the center of the Stony Brook Estate Historic District, and the several houses that were constructed were designed by the renowned architect Horace Trombauer. That is, as you have heard, all of that area is included in the National Register of Historic Places. So I have to say, as the owner, we have a front row seat of what goes on at the end of Little Creek. It is in my front yard. And as Mr. Ciparel mentioned about how Little Creek becomes a raging torrent, I see it. And as the rains come and they're more intense and more frequent, that stream, as it empties into the Secundit, you're all welcome to come to my house. I'd be delighted to show you. It is right there, and we see it empty into the Secundit, and it is a raging torrent. last few weeks ago when we had that very heavy rainstorm. The Little Creek overflowed its bounds. Our whole back was flooded, completely flooded. Now, we are an arboretum, a national arboretum. And those trees, and they're magnificent, gigantic beech trees, and huge trees of all kinds and plantings, they will not tolerate that kind of flooding. Their root systems will be weakened, and they will, in hurricanes, be destroyed. Now, I consider that arboretum an additional natural resource and an addition to the appeal of this community, to the whole town, and everyone is invited to come. So, the plan, as we've heard, warned us of this. This is not a surprise that this is happening. And as Mr. Cipro mentioned, any changes in land use or vegetative cover in these watersheds, and this includes the Little Creek, have the potential for causing, and it's not just potential because it's happening, damage from flooding due to increased volume and velocity of runoff, decreased water infiltration, decreased water quality, that includes freshwater and marine, and increased sedimentation of the waterways. The plan also recognizes the important relationship between vegetative cover, soil erosion, and pollution. These relationships illustrate the need for development to be planned with minimal disturbance of vegetation, particularly as here on a steep slope and land adjacent to waterways. As you know, you can see from these maps on the comprehensive plan, Nunes Farm is largely hydric soil, mostly wetlands. It's adjacent, as we said, to land that is permeable, but you're going to, by putting all of these impermeable surfaces on it, create an enormous increase in runoff, and it's going to come right into my yard. This is going to impact us directly, and as it flows into the Sakonnet River, as we heard that the Sakonnet is considered conservation water because of its proximity to 3rd and 2nd beaches, is going to impact that as well. And now that's an impact on everyone in this community, not to mention all the tourism and all the people who come to enjoy the beaches. So we are at an inflection point. The plan underscores that because beaches are a unique natural resource whose maintenance and preservation in their natural form require a high priority of commitment from the town, I beseech you, take a stand. The time is now. This proposed plan is excessive, it's unnecessary, it's not appropriate for this place, and I call upon you to exercise the highest priorities when you make your decision and deliberations on what should be the use of this land. And it certainly should not be for a low density or a high density or any kind of, it should remain in its pristine state. Thank you. I hope you'll do the right thing.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? This is for members of the public.
Hello, old planning board friends. My name is Liz Drayton. I live at 1116 Wapping Road in Middletown. Middle Creek flows through the back of our acreage behind a beautiful stone wall. I've watched over the years as there have been developments in the Middle Creek area, and I've been able to witness on our own property, which is down the hill on the way to Middle Creek, the increase in the water and the flooding on our property, not just in times of 100-year rainstorms, but almost all the time now. Middle Creek is really being assaulted by development. We've seen the one up the hill back behind us, the Little Creek development, the one over off of Mitchell's Lane with the pond that feeds Middle Creek. You know, this is one more development that will have an adverse effect on Middle Creek. I'm just asking the planning board to, you know, step up to a higher level. We're focused on this one little piece, this one piece of land, without thinking about how it fits into the whole area of the east side of Middletown, which is designated non-urban. This does not have septics. It does not have city water. It doesn't have city sewage. This is farmland. This is farmland that has been farmed for generations. And the development that is creating roads that are encroaching into this prime farmland, which is where that development is going right here, is designated as prime farm soil. We don't care whether the houses can be supported by that. We care more about whether the crops can continue to be supported by that soil, because it is prime farm soil. Right now, you go back on Elizabeth Lane and you walk back into the community gardens that are being farmed now by current generations who don't have their own farmland, but are utilizing that conservation area to have community farms with the CSA that are responsive to the community, responsive to, you know, the nonprofits that need food for food banks. So here we are talking about putting a development smack up against the community gardens in prime farmland, going down into wetlands that are habitats for all sorts of birds and waterfowl and aquatic animals. And what are we trading off here? You know, I read the same comprehensive plan that everybody here has read. You know, we all have the same quotes, you know, in our research that we did. And it is our vision, you know, this was determined by the people of Middletown, that our vision is to protect what makes Middletown so special, especially this east side, which is a rural area. Rural areas that have beautiful farms and view sheds and people working the land and people being able to farm and garden in their own backyards. This development, like, what are we trading here? We're trading something that is our cultural heritage, that has been going on for generations, that we're the stewards of how we will take care of this land and keep it in the same purposes that have sustained generations before us. I'm just asking that the planning board, you know, take a look, not at this small parcel, but look at this whole community where there are people here that really care and are working diligently to, on a personal level and on a public level, to maintain the beauty and the character of this really special rural area. They don't call this Paradise Valley for nothing. You know, this is Paradise Valley. You know, I don't want to change the words of the song to pave paradise and putting a housing lot, because that's kind of where we're at this point. So let's just take a step higher. Let's look at this whole area, this non-urban, rural area, and how do we maintain that for future generations? I don't think that this development speaks to our vision for what we want for the future and the respect that we have for the past that created this amazing Middletown that we live in and that we love. Thanks.
Thank you. You're the applicant, right? You're going to speak as a member of the public? Well, if you... I need help.
Is there anybody else? Is there anybody else? Other than, if there's nobody else, then...
Hold on. Hold on. Marissa?
I would just be very clear about in what capacity you're speaking, because you are represented by counsel.
Mark Horan.
Identify yourself, please.
Excuse me?
Identify yourself.
Yes, Mark Horan, Horan Building Company. I agree with a lot of the people here. I love this area. I take my kids to the beach. We go to Sweetberry Farm, walk around there. It's a great area. We go to the bird sanctuary. Went to a concert there 3 weeks ago. I'm not here to take away or ruin the integrity of the area. This is not presently a working farm. It's not. It's a piece of land sandwiched between other farms and other open space. And I think, sure, it was a perfect world. The whole thing would be just this bucolic, beautiful place. Everybody hikes, walks, enjoys it. It's not a park, though. It's not Central Park. This isn't an eminent domain hearing. It's not a taking. I submitted a plan that adheres to the regulations. It was reviewed through multiple TRC meetings. The town engineer weighed in. I was present. We had multiple meetings.
Please don't speak as an applicant. Speak as a member of the public.
Okay, as a member of the public, a good example, Elizabeth Lane. Mrs. Drayton brought that up. It's a very nice road. It's also adjacent to other farms and open space. And there's as she pointed out, there's a beautiful garden area, I guess a community garden right near the end. It's adjacent to the land trust land. Wonderful. They can cohabitate. The land is zoned R40 for a reason. The comp plan was updated fairly recently. It designated this area as R40. As Mr. Lynch pointed out, that's considered low density by definition in the comp plan. This is a reasonable request that I'm making. This is not the time to address all the engineering issues. You've identified that. Others have said so. That's the next stage. It says in the ordinance, as Mr. Lynch pointed out, if there's going to be a reduction in lots, it says specifically, I believe it's 304B, there should be a reason for it, something compelling, engineering, watershed, drainage. Those issues have not been brought forth, and I have not heard any evidence to suggest that those are problems. These are subjective comments. They're emotional comments. Fair enough. Fair enough. Where is the evidence that it should be 3 lots, as Mrs. Owen suggested, or 2 lots? Why not 1? Why can't there be an area that works together? Why can't there be open space? And this is a modest development. This is 7 lots. And you know what? Conventional plan, I'm fine with a conventional plan. If it comes down to that. Nope.
Speaking as an applicant, please.
I've made my point. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This lady, you want to speak? No.
You know, most of us have developed our properties because we have certain frontage on the road. What would be the allowable number of lots if we were just dealing with a frontage issue here?
We can't answer that.
You can't answer that?
I mean, we will take it into account when
I'm
we
just-
consider- Yeah,
I'm just throwing that out there.
thank you. Now, are you going to speak as a member of the objective team? I represent a butter, yes. So I asked for some guidance here.
Excuse me, are you intending to provide oral argument on any of the relevant topics tonight, or are you presenting some additional evidence? Which is fine, I think, but the chair is asking in which capacity you'd be approaching the podium. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Matt Lees representing Robert Sylvia, 1499 Green End Avenue, who is a direct abutter to the subject property. And we've heard quite a bit just now about the comprehensive land use plan, which is appropriate because that is a central inquiry when it comes to deciding how many lots this property can bear. And
Let's get something straight. It's
Yeah.
the town ordinances that govern the number of lots, not the comprehensive plan.
no, I think the comprehensive plan is something that it needs to be
I would
addressed.
ask the solicitor and the town planner to comment on that.
I'm sorry, can you ask the question again, please?
He made the statement that the comprehensive plan is what determines the allowable number of lots. I said it's determined by the ordinances, not the comprehensive plan.
It is determined in a calculation that is included as part of the zoning ordinance, but the terms of the comprehensive plan still govern. The narrative of the comprehensive plan still has to be considered.
Yes.
But the actual calculation is contained in the subdivision regulations.
Yeah.
And that's our position, is that you have to consider the comprehensive plan in considering whether a lesser number of lots is appropriate for this property. And we've heard quite a bit of discussion. We've heard from Mr. Lynch on his interpretations of the comprehensive plan. Mr. Haran, we should, under the zoning board decision, be hearing from Mr. Hool again. I don't know whether that's going to happen. I've heard a lot of eloquent speaking from concerned neighbors, but we brought with us tonight an expert in community planning, Paige Bronk, and I would offer him to the board as a witness who can discuss the consistency or inconsistency, really, of this proposed plan with the comprehensive community plan, which is what you're here to decide, and as well as talk about alternatives. And so
I trust you that you are aware that the members of the planning board are quite familiar with the comprehensive plan. In fact, we even have one of the authors on the planning board. So I think to assume we don't know what the comprehensive plan says is kind of off base a little bit. We're very sensitive to what the comprehensive plan says, and we're very diligent about making sure that the vision is captured.
No, I understand that, but in this setting, it's usual to have witnesses, and especially helpful to have expert witnesses such as Mr. Bronk testify and provide information to the board. And so that's what we're prepared to do tonight, if the board would
How come you didn't do this during the objector's speaking time?
We moved right into the public.
Well, but the objector had their time. He could have called the expert up at that time.
Well, I would ask to do it now if the board will hear it.
Did he?
He testified at the prior hearing. That was 11 months ago.
Well, let me ask, does he have anything new to say?
He has some new things to say, yes. But, he will be describing why this plan is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan.
Marissa, can you help us here?
It's within your discretion whether you want to take new testimony.
No, I've heard what I need to hear.
I think the sense of the planning board is that we've probably heard what he has to say.
Okay. Very well.
Thank you.
Well, at the appropriate, and maybe this is the appropriate time, I would like to sum up and give my client's position on this application. If it's now, that's fine.
We're in public speaking session. I would like to see if there are other members of the public who wish to speak. Okay. Are there other members who wish to speak? Will you be speaking as a member of the public?
As an attorney representing them, and I'm sorry, I didn't understand that you had designated a special time for objectors.
I didn't allocate a special time, but the objector had the floor right after the applicant's attorney had the floor.
Right, and I would have stepped up then, Mr. McGilvery proceeded, and then we went into public hearing. I just have a very brief.
Make it brief, please.
Gerard Galvin for Robert.
Hey, identify yourself at the microphone.
Gerard Galvin for Robert Amato, 1518 Green End Avenue. And I just wanted to make one additional effort. Mr. McGilvery did attempt to get into evidence, and Mr. Haran brought up the fact that he hasn't seen any evidence. But one of the main issues you're looking at tonight is how many lots you can have on this parcel. And the plans as submitted, we believe, this revised conventional plan does not show that you can have 7 lots there. And we have a letter from an engineer, and I know you don't want engineering now, but that's a critical issue that you need to decide tonight, how many lots you can have, how many lots. on a
We have to
conventional
decide
plan.
how many lots we can have according to the rules of the town ordinance, which
That's
is
right.
what we're
And-
doing.
And Mr. Todd Green from GZA Engineering has opined on that, and I'd like to submit this to the members of the planning board, if I may.
I don't think that's acceptable.
He's not here to be cross-examined. Ms. Small was cross-examined by Mr. McGilvery. We don't have the opportunity.
Start all over, Jay.
I just object, for the record. The engineer is not going to be here to be subject to cross-examination. Ms. Small she gave verbal testimony, she was cross-examined. I don't have any ability to question their expert on his conclusions.
You agree?
That's right,
Okay.
yes.
Sorry.
Okay, so you will not accept
No.
this or receive it?
Are there any other members of the public who
Marissa
wish
had
to
a
speak?
question.
I'd just like to say something on this topic. The role of the planning board tonight is to determine the maximum basic number of lots. That does not mean that you are bound by that number of lots when more and additional engineering information comes in at preliminary plan phase. You can make additional continuing determinations during your deliberations about what the appropriate number of lots are. Your role tonight, under the subdivision regulations, is to make a determination about the maximum basic number of lots. That's it.
Are you saying
That's
that
it.
we cannot consider a reduction in the number of lots?
You should be considering exactly what the zoning board told you to do.
Which is to consider the
Right.
reduction of lots?
To consider,
Yeah.
not to necessarily vote
Yeah,
one way or the
yeah,
other.
yeah.
So long as you consider,
Yes,
you're good.
yeah. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? We have a motion to close the public information hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to close the public information hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public information hearing is closed. Now we have the question of whether we should consider the reduction in the number of lots. Does any member of the planning board wish to speak on this topic?
Yeah, I'll speak.
Art?
Coming to a number is not easy, but based on, I think, our interpretation and our look at the comp plan and some of the relevant information we've heard from other people who have explored other areas of the comp plan, I think we should consider a maximum of 3 lots for this particular development.
What? Why not 2? Why
Are you
not?
done?
That's,
Are
well,
you
you can
finished?
do whatever you want, but I'm recommending in my consideration, my knowledge, 3. I'm not, that's my opinion. I'm not sure what everybody else thinks.
Any other comments? Mike?
Yeah, I can see that, you know, the area means a lot to the people here in this audience. For me, to try to make a decision, you know, all I can say is that if there was a desire to kind of remove this land from development, maybe the owner of the land should have made some provisions to do that. I don't know, how we can do that legally without it being challenged in the future. I just think, I think we should say conceptually that this allows up to 7 lots, and look at all the data down the line and see if that can't support it. If it can't support it, reduce it. That's my opinion.
Anyone?
Yeah.
BJ and then Joe,
Yes.
I have a comment.
and then Bill.
I am also very conflicted about this property, but I do think that 7 lots appears to be too much, according to what I've been reading with the comprehensive plan and to what I've listened to here. I would go for 3 or 4 lots for this. I think 7 is a bit greedy, and I think that being a resident of Middletown and having been brought up in Middletown, I have a great feeling for this town, and I appreciate what everyone has said here, and I can understand it.
Joe and then Bill.
I want to yield my time to Mr. Nash, since you have seniority on me on the planning board.
No, stop, no, really.
No,
Joe,
go for it,
I'm-
and I'll follow you.
Bill and then Joe.
Okay, so why not 14 lots? So 3 lots, 2 lots, I don't understand the arbitrary number. The 7 number comes from meeting all of the rules and regs that are in place in our ordinances. The owner of the property has a right to develop his lot in accordance with the rules and regs. They've put testimony on the record 11 months ago, and yes, a little bit tonight, to suggest that 7 lots is the maximum number. They can't get 14, as much as I may suggest that. They might get 3, they might get 4, but the engineering will bear that out. property owners have a right to develop their property. I was born and raised here as well. I love walking out by Statue's Point, the bird sanctuary. Joe and I, you and I have chatted about this. The rural character of this town is unmatched. I tell people that all over the country. Where I live is the most beautiful place on earth. A 7-lot subdivision will not in any way detract from that in my eyes. In that part of town, on a farm that is currently not being used, if they can't get 7 lots there, they won't get them. It's the way it is. The rules and regs exist for a reason. When my home was built, when your homes were built, there were rules and regs that the developer of those properties had to follow. And if they couldn't meet those rules and regs, they asked for a variance or a waiver. There are no waivers or variances being asked here tonight. They had to follow those rules and regs. And here we are again. If you don't like the rules and regs, absence of buying the property and protecting it, the developer has a right to do it in accordance with the rules and regs. I've seen, as much as I love the area, and as much as I heard the passionate pleas from the residents, I can't sit here and say that this plan is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan to any large degree. There may be some inconsistencies, maybe, but nothing that overwhelms the balance that we have to do up here, the balance that we have to imply, the balance of meeting the rules and regs versus the balance of is it compatible with the comprehensive plan. The rules and regs win out here overwhelmingly. And I'm going to ask Marissa, the appeal process, wherever it goes from here, because let's be honest, this thing is going to get appealed again. In my eyes, based on my experience, this thing gets overturned and they get their 7-lot approval, whether it's us, the zoning board, or the Superior Court. They're going to get that, and they're going to be back in front of us with a preliminary plan, whether we like it or not, whether the residents like it or not. People have a right to develop, and that's the way the courts will end up ruling. I'm sure of that. We need to support this. Last hearing, when we initially heard the original testimony to approve this subdivision, it was a 5-to-1 vote. Who was the 6th person? Who was the 7th? Joe, you weren't there?
I wasn't here.
Joe wasn't here, okay. So Art, I get it. You were the one against, and I respect that. Where you got 4 lots respectfully, or 3 lots, I wish you could explain to us where you got that. But my point is that 7, 6, 14, I respect that you voted opposed to it the last time. I would again this time. I'd ask the other 5, the other 4, myself included, and Joe, not necessarily you, Joe, but I'd ask the others, what's changed? Other than the applicant doing exactly what the zoning board asked them to do, and they've submitted it. No large discrepancies there in my eyes. So I believe we need to support this. Thank you.
Joe?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I came into this public hearing tonight with an open mind, and, you know, there's been a lot of speculation and concern voiced over the over the zoning board's remand. I agree with certain statements that were made about coming to the number of allowable lots, and I'm not sure that I've heard enough information relative, and I think there's some conflict or a little bit of dispute in terms of what we can be asking for tonight, given we're at master plan stage, if we have to determine the number of, maximum number of lots. So I have a question about that. Second part is, I've read the comprehensive plan multiple times and think that this does carry inconsistencies with that plan. I don't argue with Mr. Lynch's interpretation of what R4 zoning is, And notwithstanding, saying that's low density, notwithstanding that, I see multiple inconsistencies as it relates to the comp plan. I do follow along with Bill in terms of the, adhering to the rules and regulations, and every property owner has the right to develop his land following those rules and regulations. So I just think that we need a little bit more information, at least I do. So that's kind of where I stand.
Anyone else wish to speak? John?
I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. There obviously was some eloquent testimony by the concerned citizens, and I voted for it the first time. I'm one of the 5. But after listening to the testimony and Betty BJ bringing up the comprehensive plan, I refer to that old statement, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think we're going to have, I cannot vote for 7. There may be a happy number somewhere, but I cannot support the 7. And I may be overturned, I may be overruled, but I cannot support the 7 lots.
BJ?
Yes, I was one of the 6 that voted for it, but I felt very pressured to vote for the 7 because one of our members advised all of us that all the rules and regulations had been met and we really had to okay it. I was not feeling that confident about okaying 7 lots even then. So I'm open to lesser, but I don't know how many.
Other comments? Art?
Every 10 years, the town is required by state law to develop a comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is not just done by this board. It's done with the community involvement, which we had a lot of community involvement in this plan. The plan goes beyond feet, square footage, septic systems, and everything else. It is basically a planning philosophy for the future. And I think we have to take that into account and somehow come up with an accounting for this particular property. The best use for this property would be conserved by the land trust, quite frankly. But the developer has a right to do something there. And all I think I'm trying to convey is we need to come up with something reasonable. Now, I picked a number. That's just my half. If I could get 3.5, I would say that's low density to me. So 3 is a little closer for me than 3.5, and I think that's low density in this particular case. The developer will get to build some of his houses, but not all of them. And again, if we don't have that particular document and a philosophy for our future that includes development, I don't think we're ever going to go anywhere that's important. It's dangerous not to have guidance and principles of our growth and concern for our town.
Anybody else?
Yeah, just to follow up.
Bill?
Marissa, just maybe you can answer my question. Where does the appeal process go? I mean, what are the options for either side? Just curious.
Only an aggrieved party can file an appeal. Frankly, I've never had 2 appeals in a row from a planning board, so I'm not entirely certain that a second appeal is appropriate under the statute. I'd have to look at it, but I know at least it's only an aggrieved party that can request another review by the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Anyone else? Mike?
Can I get some clarification on, do you own the land, Mr. Haran, or you own it conditionally on the condition that you'll be able to develop it?
No, it's still owned by the Nunes family. It's under contract with Mr. Haran.
So what is their intentions if he can't develop it?
They're going to sell it to someone else who can develop it.
So, okay.
They're not-
So
they're-
right now, I know the quality of home that Mr. Haran builds. I know it's good stuff, and I know he takes into account, I can tell by his statement today that he feels strongly about the area and he wouldn't intentionally do anything to, destroy it, so not so sure when somebody else buys it, what their intentions would be. I think we got a good developer here right now.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, point of order.
Yeah,
We're in
we're not taking any more testimony.
It's not testimony, but he said somebody else can buy it and develop it.
Mr. I
Please.
have a clarification, more clarification.
Go ahead.
Well, no, ahead. You want to go to somebody else? That's fine.
Yeah, I would.
fine.
I'd
Well,
like
then
to
go
see
ahead.
if anybody else.
That's
would
fine,
like
I have
to
another
comment.
question, though.
No? Go ahead,
Sure, thank
before
you.
I make my comment.
Thank you, Paul. So Marissa, if this board votes tonight to deny and have people change their vote from the previous which is possible, well, probably likely, frankly, and it doesn't pass, the applicant does not have any pathway on appeal?
The ordinance allows for any aggrieved party to take an appeal,
Oh,
so.
so that's what you meant. So it could be,
Right.
it could be either side.
Right.
Right. Which as I indicated, and that goes to,
The zoning board of appeals.
goes back to the zoning board again.
That's right.
Okay. That's good. So what I would say then to the board here, if you're inclined to deny this based on the comprehensive plan inconsistencies, I think we need to be clear, very clear, because if we're not clear there, then it's a no-brainer that it gets remanded back, or as much as they claim our first decision was not complete, then I would suggest that we need to be very clear why we feel there are inconsistencies. And as I said, you know my position, but I'd like to see that. I think we need to be clear on that.
Yes, the zoning board indicated that the planning board should apply the evidence to make findings as to whether the conventional plan is capable of supporting the proposed development, given any land development constraints. In addition, the planning board should exercise particular care in citing whatever portions of the testimony or the evidence that they find relates specifically to the standards set forth in Section 404 required findings.
So would you recommend then that the findings that were listed in the original decision are sufficient for that?
Only the issues that you're dealing with tonight do you have to re-vote on.
So can you assist us if we're ultimately, I know Paul needs to speak, if we're ultimately going to make a motion in the affirmative and vote, which is typically what we do, right? Motion in the affirmative, and then we can vote to approve or deny. We need to put findings into that motion that suggest.
But also your deliberations touched on what you were relying on to render your decision, so you don't have to go through the entire record and say page 6.
No, I understand
paragraph
that, but I'm looking for maybe if there are any key points that we need to put into that decision, or at the very least,
Let's wait until we hear all the discussion.
prepare a decision for review before we vote? Or prepare some findings, I'm sorry, not so much a decision, but findings.
We're not ready to vote yet. Okay?
But I'm just,
Are there any other people who have comments? Joe?
Again, I feel the zoning board has asked us to make a decision on the maximum number of lots on the conventional plan. I think it was pretty specific in that remand back to us. I'm struggling with figuring out what that maximum number is, given that there's inconsistency here in terms of what is required at master plan level and preliminary, and we've gotten into that discussion about we can't talk about details, but how do I make a decision on 3 lots, 2 lots, 14 lots without some level of detail? So that presents a particular challenge to me personally. And, you know, that is the rule and regulation, since it was remanded back to us from the zoning board, that I'm following. And then layer on top of that what I've read in the comp plan. That's kind of where my head's at right now.
I'd like to speak now.
Okay.
Thank you. I voted for the 7 lots originally because we were advised that we could consider a reduction in the number of lots at a later stage in the process. And that is why I voted to approve 7 lots for master plan approval originally. What has changed since then is that the Zoning Board of Appeals says we should consider a reduction in the number of lots at this stage, which we didn't do because of the advice we received earlier. Now, the applicant has submitted a request for us to consider the conservation plan rather than the conventional plan. I like that request because this property, I believe, would benefit from a conservation development rather than a conventional development. However, when I look at the plan that's been submitted, in my mind, it does not satisfy requirements given by the comprehensive plan. It says that the open space should benefit all of the residents in the development. In this layout, 2 of the lots do not have access to the open space, and one of them has access only through a long, narrow stretch of property, which I doubt they would use. So in my mind, this is not a good conservation development plan for this property. My suggestion, for those who like specifics, is I would consider, I guess that's what we're doing here, Marissa, is considering.
Good word.
I would consider a plan that has 4 lots, with 2 on the east side of the road and 2 on the west side of the road, with a large space between the 2 on the east side of the road that can be developed as open space available to all of the residents. So, my consideration and what I would put forward is a 4-lot development, 2 on the east side, 2 on the west side, with open space, a large open space, common space between the 2 on the east side of the road. And I put that up for discussion.
So, okay. Thank you, Paul. So, a reduction in lots. This is, as you said, Marissa, we've considered, as Paul said, we used that word, which is important. If we reducing the lots to anything less than 7 is an easy appeal, it's, they can prove that 7 fit there with no further need to prove that. That's a no-brainer in my eyes. So 7 lots, it's 7 lots or no lots, is how it comes down. So now it points to, and that's why I was getting to it, is it points to really the argument of where in our eyes does this thing not meet the comprehensive plan? And I suggest that we put those items. So I don't think we can consider, but if there's a motion to do anything less than 7, I don't know how anybody could support that.
The open space is not available to all of the lots.
Understood, okay, okay, that's one. But really, the crux of it is the inconsistencies by some of my fellow board members, that they believe that it's not consistent. So I would respectfully ask that you tell us, put that on the record, so that we can get that into the motion, so that when this thing gets appealed, at least there's something there that says, not just because we don't feel that it meets, we need to say why it doesn't meet the comprehensive plan. And frankly, as I said, my position, I don't see any overwhelming evidence to suggest that.
Art?
I-
And then Mike?
I really don't care what the zoning board does or doesn't do on appeal. I think it's our responsibility to identify what's appropriate for this particular piece of property, particularly since we have, I think, outlined plenty of evidence can go along with our decision based on, for example, Mrs. Owen's reference to identified historical sites at the state basis, and other testimony we heard from some of our citizens who have read in great detail the comp plan. I mean, we cannot control what happens after this, where it goes. But I think we need to go on record and be consistent about this plan and the number of lots, particularly since it is low density. That's why, for me, 3 was the number. So whatever happens after this and where it goes, that's not our job. We have to be responsible in what we do in a decision we make, and we forward it, and it goes into the appeal system, and that's great. And if it's overturned, I can sleep well at night knowing that I tried to do the right thing on this particular application.
Mike?
On the conservation plan, could we, could access be allowed, to the non-abutting lots through some sort of easement? I mean, that's a possibility, right?
Ask them,
Yeah.
they're putting forth the plan.
I mean, that's a possibility, right, that in a conservation plan, access to the, well, I guess the open space could be made, through some sort of easement, for the non-abutting lots, I would assume.
That's the board's call. If you want to propose a change, you have that discretion.
Yeah.
Well,
BJ?
yes, I firmly believe that my response is to the historical significance that as reflected in our comprehensive plan. And I'm very strong, I must say, as a history major at university and a history teacher of government, and growing up in a teaching family here in Middletown, where my mother taught for, I think, probably 35 years, I do believe that we need to follow this cultural plan and the historical significance of everything that we've been talking about. And I appreciate what everyone has said, and I feel a kinship for that. And therefore, I just think we need to have a feeling for the property and how it will look when these homes are developed. And therefore, I think 7's too many.
Any other comments? At this point, we need to take a vote.
Yes, make a motion, take a vote.
We need a motion.
Does anyone wish to make a motion, or should I make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion that this application contain building for 3 lots, not 7.
If I might, maybe I'll try to help through what the motion might be.
Should be.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I believe since the zoning board essentially overturned the initial approval, you're basically back to just prior to your vote at the last go-round. So I think that your motion is going to have to address approval or denial, but since we vote or move in the affirmative, it would be a motion to approve the subdivision. First of all, determining which plan you're referencing, conservation or conventional. As we always do, you'll talk about the conditions that you wish to apply to that approval. There were 2 conditions. I gave you the decision from the last time with the 2 conditions that were applied at that point. I would suggest that you apply those conditions at a minimum. If you wish to include additional conditions of approval, including a reduction in the number of lots and anything else that you might wish to apply, you can do that as part of the motion. And then again, as we always do, referencing the required findings of fact. So that's my suggestion. The solicitor can overrule me if she wishes, but my thinking is you, again, include in the motion the plan that you're considering approving, the conditions that you would apply to that approval, and the findings that you're basing that decision on.
That's right.
But how do we address, we're going to address the lots, the two issues.
That would be a condition of the approval. So if the motion is to approve the master plan, one of the conditions might be, again, it's up to the board, that the master plan is approved subject to the condition that the number of lots be reduced from 7 to whatever, whether it's 3 or 4 or whatever the number is. So that would be a condition. If the vote prevails, the master plan would be approved with that condition, reducing the number of lots to that number. When the applicant comes back with the preliminary plan, he is going to have to show you a preliminary plan with that number of lots.
So Ron, excuse me, we have to give a number, not just say a reduction of lots, and that number, if it's on appeal, it can be.
I would think that you'd want to have a number, because otherwise the applicant doesn't understand fully what the board is looking for.
Thank you.
So here's the flavor that I'm hearing on the board is that the lots is one thing, which I don't necessarily agree with, and the comp plan's another thing. So a motion in the affirmative to approve, I mean, I can support on one end, but not the other. So maybe frankly, the motion at this point should be a motion to deny and see what happens.
I think you make the motion in the affirmative. If you cannot make the required finding of consistency with the comp plan, as some of you have suggested, members of the board need to articulate why and to what sections of the comp plan you feel the plan does not comply, and that would be part of the discussion and the vote when it's taken. If the vote fails based on the inability to make that finding of consistency with the comp plan, at least there'll be some testimony or some input from the board members as to why that decision was made.
Let me make a motion. Go ahead. Okay. Does Art have to withdraw his motion? I'd like to make a motion.
There wasn't a second, right? I don't think. Oh,
There was
I
no
think I
second.
stopped him
That's right.
before he finished making his motion.
There was no second. All right. I'd like to make a motion that we approve a conservation development and with a reduction to 4 lots. The reason being that the plan as submitted does not meet the requirement that the open space is accessible to all of the properties. It would be good to see 2 lots on the east side of the road, 2 on the west side of the road, and on the east side of the road, a large common space available to all as part of the open space.
Paul, how about include the comprehensive plan, page 11, 1110 and 1111, where it mentions Green End Avenue landscape, and it mentions Howland Avenue, Green End Avenue.
BJ, I
as
can't hear you.
historic.
Speaking.
Yeah, as historic. I just suggested the comprehensive plan, page 1110 and 1111, where it mentions the inventory of historic landscapes. I think that is a consideration here.
We need the
And it-
section.
And it mentions, I just said.
Yeah, she said it.
I said
I thought that was the
1110,
page. Did you
1112.
say page? I'm sorry.
No,
Yes,
she
So
said
I
the second.
are you trying to incorporate this into the motion?
Yes, and it mentions.
I think we should say, in consideration of historical landscapes as per the comprehensive plan.
So I'm going to need you to start from the beginning on what the motion is, because
You're kidding
I'm not
me.
following.
You think I'm going to
No,
remember?
I'm not following what
Okay.
you're doing.
Let's see if I can, okay. So I make a motion that we give master plan approval to a conservation development plan
Subject to conditions.
that have already been established, plus,
No, I need you to say what the conditions are.
well, the 2 that you had,
Right.
plus what I'm going to say.
So the two the two conditions that I'm referencing, so everyone is understanding that, those that don't have this. Condition number 1 is new lots will be subject to the town's development impact fees ordinance, Town Codes Chapter 150, and a note to that effect must be included on the plan. Second condition, the builder is required to comply with provisions of the town's stormwater management ordinance, Chapter 153, and construction site runoff and erosion control, Chapter 151. Use of impervious paving and other methods to improve, to promote infiltration of storm runoff should be considered as means of meeting the requirements of Chapter 153. A note to this effect should be provided on the plan. So those are the first two potential conditions of approval. So
Two
you're
important
You're working on the
conditions.
third.
Yes.
Okay.
And because the current submission of the conservation plan does not provide access to all of the lots to the open space, my motion is to have 2 lots on the west side of the road and 2 lots on the east side of the road separated by a large common space that is accessible to all of the lots, which it would be. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
And that's subject to the required findings as well.
Subject to the required findings as well.
I'll second it. Motion is
Thank
seconded.
you. Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead, Bill.
So I'm going to support the motion. I don't support the lots, the number of lots. We need to support this. But I sense that the board is going to go the other way, but I'm in favor of this with 7 lots. But I understand the motion is at 4. And I believe that this plan is in compliance, substantial compliance with the comprehensive community plan. But I believe we need to support a 7-lot approval.
Further discussion? Joe?
Well, I guess, you know, the comment was made that the property is zoned R40, and that's in the comp plan. It wouldn't be the first time land that maybe should have been changed in a comp plan has been overlooked. I find the development proposal inconsistent with the comp plan for a variety of reasons, some of which have been articulated tonight. BJ, you brought up them again. You know, I think I personally can't support moving a positive vote on it, but that's just me.
Other comments? All those who are in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes 7-0.
Nope.
No,
One
I
opposed.
do not vote in favor.
Oh, I'm
but
sorry. I missed that. 6-1. 6-1. Is there any further business to be brought before the planning board this evening? We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for coming this evening. Appreciate it.
You know, we approved this, what we've said is that it's compatible with the comprehensive plan. They're gonna now go to the zoning board and say, the planning board said it.